This is the first in a series of 4 talks given by Krishnamurti in Ojai, California. Jiddu Krishnamurti is regarded internationally as one of the great teachers and philosophers of all time. For some 60 years, he has been traveling throughout the world giving public talks to increasingly large audiences. He has published over 30 books and founded schools in the United States, England, and India.
If I may, I would like to point out that this is not an entertainment. This is a serious gathering, as we're going to explore together the various issues of life. And also, this is not a lecture as it is generally understood. A lecture is to inform, to instruct, and to persuade you to think in a particular way, or be so knowledgeable and be thoroughly informed. So this is not a lecture, nor is it a propaganda to propagate certain ideas, beliefs, or some romantic or reasonable conclusions. But rather, we are going to think over together the many complex problems of our daily life. And in no way is the speaker trying to convince you of anything, nor to persuade you to accept some romantic, exotic, or some philosophical concepts and ideas. This must be made perfectly clear that we are not encouraging or stimulating or trying to in any way to direct, but rather together, you and the speaker, go into the very many issues, problems that we have. It's not merely that you are listening to the speaker, but though you are listening to him, you're also watching, considering your own reactions, your own conclusions, your own experiences. And we are going to question, doubt, have great deal of skepticism without cynicism. Because most people are very gullible. We have been made gullible by experts. Whether they be experts along philosophical lines, or psychological, or scientific, or biological, and so on. we never seem to question ourselves or the authorities, the people who know, who assert, especially those people who come from that Asiatic countries with their peculiar beliefs and religious dogmas and superstitions. So please, from the very beginning of these talks and questions and answers, we are going to question everything. We're going to have a great deal of skepticism, including what the speaker is saying. Question it, doubt it, find out, if one may respectfully point out, what is true, to be able to be sensitive enough so that one captures not only the verbal meaning, but also what lies behind the words, the content of the words. Not only the etymological meaning of the words, but also the quality, the beauty, the strength of a word. Because most of us are caught in a network of words. Our whole thinking process is a verbalization, making pictures and images. And we are caught in all that. So we never actually be free from words and permit to go beyond the word or the explanation or the description. If we could, this morning and the following days, be very clear on these matters, that the speaker has no authority whatsoever. He is not a professional, not an expert of any kind. So the speaker, that's rather frightening to be an expert about something. But if we could together, we mean together, take a very, very long journey, a timeless journey into the very complex structure of human psyche, of what we are, why we are behaving the way we do, why we have all these crowding thoughts, one after the other, ceaselessly, chattering. If we could together, amicably, as friends do, take a long walk into an area that superficially we have scratched. Superficially we have had innumerable descriptions, explanations by the professionals, the psychologists, psychiatrists, the biologists and the archaeologists and so on. But we could put aside all that for the time being, though it may perhaps have certain value at other times. But if we could this morning like two friends talking over their problems. We have problems. Life is full of problems. From the moment we are born till we die. And we seem to be unable to resolve any of these problems. On the contrary, as a civilization, whatever that word may mean, grows, we seem to be multiplying problems. And we never seem to be able to be free of all problems and to live a life that is without a single shadow of a problem. And to all this, we're going to take a journey. You're responsible for taking the journey because you've come here. Though it's rather hot. And I hope you'll be careful not to smoke because it's much too dangerous. It's your responsibility as a human being to find out why, after 50,000 years or more or less, we are what we are. During the long period of evolution, from the most primitive brain to the highly sophisticated brain that we have. Why, during all this period of vast experience, knowledge, incidents, so-called evolution, why we are still what we are, primitive, psychologically, hating, violent, superstitious, killing each other, accepting one authority after another. I do not know if you have noticed in this country, there are experts who tell you how to dress, how to make up your face, how to have sex, how to bring up babies, how to read. And all the politicians tell you what to do. So if you have noticed, perhaps you maybe do not notice as you're too close to it. When you come to this country from abroad, you notice all these things all over again. They're telling you, everybody, the newspapers, the magazines, the priests, the evangelists, the authorities, the specialists, the experts telling you what to do. And this is supposed to be a free country, supposed to be free people who are capable of thinking things out for themselves, capable of dealing with their own lives, either righteously or unrighteously. One wonders why a young nation like this, so caught up in the travail of experts. So we are losing our own inward stability, clarity, and a sense of behavior. I do not know if you have noticed all these things. Perhaps the speaker may be exaggerating, but I doubt it. When he comes from abroad, for a week he listens to all the television, all the channels, 13 channels, newspapers, magazines, talks to some of the experts, listens to the evangelists. My God, what a crowd. And apparently this country is bent on fun and success, money, and a way of having pleasure superficially. You must have noticed all this too. So this is the country that's becoming dominant throughout the world. From Asia, from India and Europe, they all want to go to America, to the States. Not only to have more money, to have the capacity of invention, and so on. So, please, if one may repeat it over again, we are not experts, we are not professional. We are in no way instructing you or telling you what to do, but rather, with great simplicity, with great affection, let us walk together. Together, either you walk very fast or very slowly, but together. Explore into the injustice of this world and inquire if there is justice at all. Why human beings hurt each other, kill each other? Why belief, faith, ideals are dividing people throughout the world? Like the ideology of Russia and the democratic ideology are at war, piling up all armaments throughout the world, even the most poorest country. You must be, surely you're aware of all this. So everybody throughout the world are preparing to kill each other. Demonstrations to stop a particular kind of war, neutron or atomic wars. But nobody seems to be concerned with stopping all wars. There is no demonstration to stop wars, to kill human beings. And after these 40, 50,000 years, we are still what we are. What has happened? Why are we like this? Time is supposed to give us understanding. supposed to give us knowledge, supposed to give us a sense of right or true behavior, accurate. But apparently, time has not solved any of our problems. On the contrary,
Scoot up into the shadow.
what's that? It's all right. That light is there purposely, I believe. It's not the sunlight, unfortunately. So one asks, as one must, talking over together as two friends, say, why have we become like this? It's not only in this country, it's right throughout the world. From the most primitive village in Africa or India to the most highly civilized, so-called civilized people. What has happened to us? Some may be thoroughly satisfied with what we are, especially if you are rich, powerful, have status and position, then you don't question these things. But if one is thoroughly dissatisfied, not in revolt, dissatisfied, I hope one sees the difference between dissatisfaction and revolt. If you're dissatisfied with which comes from observing things as they are actually, dissatisfied with all the things that man has put together, then you are beginning to inquire into it. But if you merely revolt against it, that revolt is merely a reaction. And we're full of reactions. Therefore, we never get any further. But if you could, perhaps only this morning, see things as they are, not according to your particular prejudice or conclusion or ideologies and faith, but things as they are. Not only in your own particular backyard, but throughout the world. The starving, the poor, the uneducated, the extraordinarily rich people. Tremendous power in the hands of the few. Whether it is democratic or communist, totalitarian, power, money, with all that goes with it. So if we could, as friends, not oppose to each other, not contradicting each other, nor accepting each other, what the other fellow says, but together take this journey, which means you, each one of us, whatever speed you would like, walk, but walk, not let the other person do all the talking, all the explanations, all the reasons and descriptions. Together, look at it, observe it. To observe is one of the most difficult things to do. To observe without any direction, without any motive, without any word, just to observe that tree, for example, without being caught in the word tree and all the implications of that word. If we so were able to observe ourselves and the world in which we live without any prejudice, without any conclusion, from any point of view, whether yours or mine or somebody else's. Just to look at it first. We see there is a great deal of misery, great deal of poverty. There are affluent societies like this country, though there is poverty in this country. There is war, nation against nation, tribe against tribe, ideologies against ideologies, the Catholic, the Protestant, the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Muslim, and so on. 2,000 years of propaganda of the Christians, and 15 or 1600 years of propaganda of the Muslims, and 2,000 or 3,000 years or more of the Hindus and the Buddhists. We are slaves to this propaganda called religion, called nations, and so on. The world is at war, not only in a particular part of the Mediterranean, but there are wars going on. I believe 40 wars are going on, being told. Perhaps it's a mistake. So that's observed outwardly. There's competition, each one out for himself, in the name of God, in the name of psychology, in the name of science. Each one is out for himself, for his success, for his fame, for his reputation, for his power, and so on. And also in this world, externally, individuality is given tremendous importance. Each one thinks he's the entire world, to do exactly what he wants, to fulfill, to succeed, to compete, all the rest of it. And also externally, so-called religions, which have divided man too. The whole Christian world, with all its subdivisions, and the Buddhist, the Muslim, and the Hindu, divided. And they're also, perhaps, so-called peacefully at war. Perhaps too, if you can listen, observe accurately, Christians have killed more people than anybody else, right? Look at it carefully. I'm not against Christians or Hindus, just observing all this. So externally, our society is in chaos. In that society we live, which is degenerating and dangerously near. And so this is the external world in which we live. Obviously, one asks, who created all this external world? The society in which we live. Surely no divine hand has molded the society. The society is put together by each one of us through our violence, through our pleasure, through our fears and beliefs and dogmas, through our search for security in the family, the community, in the nation. We have created this society, each one of us. And there is no question about that. We have made the society in which we live. And there are the reformers like the communists who wish to alter the structure of the society externally. The socialists, the totalitarians, and also democratic people who through legislation and all the rest of it, want to alter the organization of society. When that organization fails, they invent another organization. You must know all this. So organizations, by reorganizing, is called progress. Right? I do not know if you have noticed all these things. Politically, religiously, and socially. It happens in the universities, colleges, in professional areas. But we never question deeply, seriously, why we live in this society which we have made, which we have structured, put together. And this is the result of 40, 50,000 years of evolution. Either it's altogether hopeless. Man will everlastingly live this way, because for 40,000 years he has lived this way. And if we look to time to change fundamentally the structure of the psyche, the inwardness of our ways, if we rely on time, another 40,000 years will still be the same. If 40,000 years has not changed us, another 40,000 years is another game. So, one asks very seriously, my friend and I are talking together, walking in a shaded lane where there are a lot of birds and flowers and the beauty of the earth. Is it possible to change the human behavior? Is it possible to for a human being who is so fragmented, so broken up, so contradictory, so much in conflict? Is it possible to fundamentally, not superficially, through pressure, through reward and punishment, but deeply, can there be a mutation not only in the brain cells themselves, but in the whole structure of the psyche, which is self-centered, egotistic, utterly concerned with itself? This has been the problem of some of the religious people from the ancient of times. And those very, very, very few have perhaps broken the chain of self-centeredness with all its limited selfish activity. And the vast majority of people carry on. So we're asking, my friend and I together, is it possible for us to change? Not change to something else. That's only a becoming. When you change what you are to what you should be, that's a form of becoming, right? So that's no change at all. I wonder if you understand this. If I'm greedy or schizophrenic or utterly committed to some kind of amusement and fun and entertainment, to change from that particular form of entertainment to another form of entertainment is still entertainment, right? But change implies an ending, not a continuity, right? Are we together in this? You are the friend walking with the speaker. If this is not clear, we must go into it because it's very important to understand this. We must inquire into what is ending. Take, for example, the word austerity. Austere. The etymological meaning of that word is to have a dry tongue. Not take alcohol. The root meaning of that word is to, in Greek and so on, is to have a dry mouth. From that, arises the word harsh. Dry, sense of cruel control, a sense of simplicity according to certain pattern. Now, austerity, we're not talking those terms of dryness, harsh, cruel. cruel discipline to be austere. I wonder if you understand all this. To have great simplicity inwardly, that can only happen when there is absolute clarity. And that can take place when there is an ending to constant indulgence. Ending. Say, for example, if you are a smoker, end it. Not take a lozenge in its place. Choose something else in its place. If you are greedy, violent, and all the rest of it, end it. Not say, I will be something else. We'll go into this much more deeply when we talk about death. You don't mind talking about death, do you? Americans are rather frightened about it, aren't they? And there are books written now recently, I see, how to die happily. They're helping the people who are dying to die easily. But death is something extraordinary which we'll talk about later on. So there is the importance of understanding ending. Go into it for yourself, and you'll see the extraordinary thing that we never end anything. There's always the ending and a beginning of the same thing in a different form. We took the word austere, which is really extraordinary, inward austerity. Great sense of simplicity. Without any complexity. But we won't go into that now because that requires a great deal of understanding. Because we have the picture of great many saints and so-called religious people who are very, very austere, at least they pretend. And there is no austerity without love. Love and simplicity is the essence of austerity. So, my friend and the speaker are talking over together. They say, is it possible for each one of us to fundamentally end greed and violence, the search lastingly for some kind of pleasure, and fear, and so on. So we'll go into it now. From childhood, our brains have been conditioned to solve problems. A child goes to the school, he has a problem to how to read and write. And as he grows older, mathematical problems, geographical problems, historic, so on. So our brain Actually, this is a fact. It's not my speaker's imagination, if you have observed yourself. Our brains are conditioned to solve problems. The brain is conditioned. So throughout life, we are trying to solve problems. Haven't you noticed this? So, to solve a problem, the brain must be free to solve it. But if it is full of problems itself, it cannot solve problems. That's a logical, sane observation. You can see it in politics, how it is, what is happening. They solve one problem, and in the solution of that problem, there are multiple problems. Right? You see this economically and so on. So one of our first demands or first inquiry is to find out whether we can be free to investigate why our brains, why we are always solving problems, why we have problems first. We have problems, right? And you go to various places to resolve your problems. If you have never been alone in the world, wandering among the hills, they'll teach you how to be alone in the woods. You pay $200 or $500 or more, and they teach you. And you are willing to be taught. Right? So, what we are saying is, a brain, your brain, when it is conditioned from childhood to the resolution of problems, you're only multiplying problems. But if one can understand, see the fact, not only the explanation, the reason, the logic of it, but see the fact that a brain that is trained, educated to solve problems as you have been from childhood, you are bound to increase more and more problems. Right? This logic saying. So, is it possible for us, for you, to approach a problem with a brain that has no problems? You understand? You understand this? I'm afraid you don't. See the fact first that if you have problems and your brain is trained to solve problems, as it is now, right, then you can't solve the problem. Right? It's only when the brain is free then you can resolve problems. Right? This is logic. Reason. And the lawyers and the professionals increase our problems. They're paid to do that. Whereas if we want to solve a problem, one must look at the problem and how you approach the problem. How you approach it. To approach means to come near, How do you come near to a problem? You can't come near to the problem if your mind is seeking the solution of the problem, right? You can only come near it, look at it, observe it, when you are not wasting your energy searching for a solution. I wonder if you understand all this. It's very simple, don't get complicated. I have a problem, suppose I have with a friend or with a wife or husband. How do I approach it? Freely, or with a conclusion which I would like to bring about, or I have a motive. So a motive, a conclusion, a preconceived solution is a distorting factor. So I never solve the problem, right? So our first inquiry into this is, can we look at problems in the world and in ourselves, and the world is not different from you. The world is what we have made of it. The society is not different from you. You are the society, you are the world is you. And can we look at that? That is, the look, observe freely without any direction of a problem, whatever the problem is. Then, in the observation, in coming very, very close to it, then the problem itself becomes important, not the answer. Understand? And therefore there is no problem. I can't go on into it. If you have understood it, so much the better. So, which means, why is it that our brains, because that is the center of all our activity, all our thought, all our emotions, it is at the center of all our reactions. That brain is conditioned through long years of 40,000 years. It's conditioned as Christian, Buddhist, as a philosopher, as a scientist, as a psychologist, psychiatrist, the whole business of it. It's conditioned. That conditioning not only distorts action, but also creates great many problems in relationship, in communication, in looking at things without freedom. So we ought to inquire into that first. That is, why our consciousness, understand? Our consciousness is the whole content of our brain, is what we are. Right? What you think, what you feel, what your beliefs, what your pleasures, your faith, your prejudices, your experiences, your memories, your pleasures, and so on. All that is what you are. All that is your consciousness, with all its reactions. Right? You see, nothing strange, it's very simple. Don't go to a professional to find all this out. You can look at yourself, you can know it if you're capable of observing yourself very clearly, you find this out much more deeply, truly, than from a book or from a professional. So this is what you are. And we are asking a very serious and a fundamental question. This self-centered consciousness is the consciousness of the entire world. Because every human being throughout the world is self-centered like you. He has pleasure, he has pain, he has sorrow, he has various superstitions, beliefs. He has invented gods as you have invented gods. So, this consciousness which you have, which you think is yours, personal, mine, is the consciousness of the entire world. They are trying to prove this in different ways scientifically. I won't go into all that. Then when science says, then probably you'll all say yes. Because we have been taught to accept what the experts say. But we are not the experts here. We are together looking at this extraordinary phenomena, which is a human being. And religion, society, our own pleasures have made us think we are separate individuals. I know what we are saying goes everything against what you believe. On the contrary, we are saying you are not individuals. You are the rest of humanity. You are humanity because you suffer, because you have fears, you have many illusions and superstitions and beliefs. You have one God or one Savior, and they should have 1,000 gods, perhaps that's more fun. So you are like the rest of the world. It's a tremendous realization, this fact. Then you will not kill another. Then you will be, if you kill another, you're killing yourself. So that is the one thing our conditioning has made us. Religions have said you are separate soul. In India too, you are separate Atma and so on, so on. So can all this be radically changed, fundamentally? So that we can live on this earth, which is so beautiful, even though it's rather hot this morning. It's such a beautiful world. Not in pictures, not in the museums. But when you look around, the hills, the rivers, the valleys, there's a great sense of beauty in the world. Nature is not made by man. The tiger is not put together by thought. But apart from nature, Thought has put everything together. The structure of our own self. So thought is responsible. Without thought and memory, which is born of knowledge, you can't do a thing. So we ought to inquire, what is thought? Just enough. We're going to inquire together, if you will, what is thinking? What is thought? Because thought has created the extraordinary world of technology. Going to the moon, the neutron bomb, the missiles, the submarines, the computer, the communication, the railways, the airplane. Thought I put together all that. And also thought has put together the whole business world. Thought has also put together all the cathedrals of the world, the temples, the mosques, the churches, and the magnificent, the beautiful cathedrals of Europe. And also thought has put all the things that are in the churches, in the cathedrals, in the temples, and the mosques. Their rituals, their garb, their clothes, their scepters, all the things that go to show off the religious person. And also thought has invented God. So we should inquire very carefully into the nature of thought. Because everything we do is based on thought. Your relationship with another, intimate or not, is structured by thought. Write a letter, drive a car. To be a first-class scientist or carpenter, must have thought. So we should very carefully understand the nature of thought, why thought has become so extraordinarily important in our lives. And thought may be also one of the reasons why we destroy each other. So what is thought? What is thinking? When you're asked a question, what's your name? Your answer is very quick, immediate. Why? Well, you repeated 100 times, you're familiar with it. If you ask us another complicated question, there's a time interval before you answer it. During that time interval, you're looking, you're searching, you're asking, and you're looking into books to find out the answer. There's an interval between the question and the answer. During that interval, thought is inquiring. And also, when you ask something much more complicated, and you say, I don't know, I wonder if you ever say, I don't know. Do you? When you say, I don't know, you're waiting for an answer or for somebody to tell you. So these are the stages of thinking. Now, so, what is thinking? Perhaps you have heard the speaker talk about it, explain it. Forget, if I may request you, what the speaker has said or what you have read about it. Completely put aside all that and let us look at thinking. Your thinking may be crooked or straight or rational or facile or neurotic, schizophrenic, but he's still thinking. The most erudite person and the most illiterate person, a man who doesn't know how to read or write, who lives in a small little village, he also thinks. So there is this extreme forms of thinking. Subtle, crude, and so on. So we should be very clear what is thinking. Because all our life is based on thinking. Perverted, crooked, illogical, illusory, utterly stupid. Thinking can only take place when there is memory. Without memory, you cannot think. And this memory is stored in the brain, cells in the brain. Right? And memory is the accumulation of knowledge. And knowledge can only exist when there is experience. And experience is always limited. Right? And so knowledge can expand, be wide, but knowledge is always limited, either in the future or now. Is always limited. That's a fact. Scientists are adding more and more and more to what they already know. So, knowledge is being always limited, now or in the future. So thought or a memory is always limited, obviously. So thought is limited, right? So where action then, born of thought, will always be limited. Therefore, anything that is limited must create contradiction. Right? Do you understand all this? When you are thinking about yourself all day long, as most people do, it's very limited, isn't it? And action born of that limitation must create innumerable problems, contradictions. So, go into it more deeply, which is, as thought is limited, which is logic, which is so, there's no complete thought about anything, cannot. It can think about completeness. It can think about measureless. But the thing that thought thinks about as being measureless is still limited, because in itself thought is limited, right? So thought being limited, everything it has done has created contradictions. That is, thought has created nationalities, right? Because thought says I must be secure. I am not secure with a family, but I will be secure with a greater community, and the ultimate greater community is the nation, which is the beginning, which is born out of tribalism. Nationalism is merely another form of glorified tribalism. And so, therefore, you have divided the world into the Christian world, the Buddhist world, the Hindu world, the Islamic world, with their separate gods, which all seems so utterly silly. Pardon me by saying so. And so where there is division, there must be conflict. Right? There's conflict going on in the eastern end of the Mediterranean, between the Jew and the Arab, the Iran and the Iraq, fighting about war. The things, the ideological gods and suppositions which each group has created. So when one realizes, not verbally or logically, but the reality of that thought is everlastingly limited. There is no ending to the limitation of thought. Thought then is a material process, because it's stored in the brain. It's a material process. Therefore, anything that thought has created can never be not only limited, sacred, holy. So, one asks, if thought is limited and creates such havoc in the world, what is the place of thought? Are you asking these questions? You understand? Is the speaker working, or are you also working? Are you also thinking, inquiring, groping, and pushing? Or are you merely sitting under the shade of a dappled shade, enjoying the mountains and the hills and the quietness of this place, which is good too, but to listen to something that is true. Listen to something which you yourself have found for yourself to be true. And then be committed to it, work for it. Not just let things go by. If you hear the truth and not act, then that truth acts as a poison. It creates more trouble, more problems. So, there must be right place for thought. You cannot go from here to your house without thought. You cannot drive your car as soon as you leave this place. When you want to get home, you have to use thought. You have to use thought when you write a letter. You have to use thought when you do business, and so on. So thought has a right place. But has thought any place at all, please listen to this, has any place at all in the psychological area, any place at all in relationship with each other? No, Mr. McQueen. Has thought a relationship, in relationship, a place at all? If it has, then in that relationship there is a limitation. Therefore there is division. Therefore there is conflict. Right? In my relationship to a wife or to a husband, to a girl or boy and so on, if in that relationship thought plays a great part, as thought being limited, then that very limitation creates a division between her and him. And therefore, where there is division, there must be conflict. As you know very well, in all your relationships there is conflict. However much you may like another, I won't use the word love. However much you may like the other, have pleasure with the other, it's always limited, therefore breeding conflict. That's law, that's logic, that's true. So thought has its right place in the world of technology, in the world of ordinary world. But psychologically, inwardly, thought has no place at all. Then there is a place that's the very, that creates the self, the me. And the me, the ego, the persona, is very limited. It can imagine it's marvelous. You can imagine an extraordinary thing. Whether that imagination, whether that picture is really still very, 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 very limited, small. To see the truth of this, that's all. One has to do nothing but just see the fact of it. And that very fact, the perception of the fact, as you perceive something dangerous, like a dangerous animal, a dangerous precipice. If you see this as factually, as actually as that, then you break the whole chain of continuity of the self. Then only it's possible to live with another without any single shadow of conflict. Because the conflict is the very essence of violence. We think violence is out there. The terrorists, the kidnappers, the wars, the people who carry guns. As in this country, everybody's allowed to carry guns. Most extraordinary country. You go into a shop, you can buy a gun. So violence is not only out there, but violence in relationship exists as long as there is division. There's the me and the you. The me pursuing my ambitions, my greed, my purposes, my achievements, and she also doing the same. Therefore, We're always living in conflict. And realizing the conflict, we say, how am I to solve it? So we come back, brain being conditioned to the solution of problems from childhood. So you say, all right, let's see how I can resolve or change or bring about ending of conflict. That becomes a problem. Right? That's what you're doing now. How am I to end conflict? But if you saw the root of it, the cause of it, whatever has a cause, that cause can be changed, can be removed. The cause of conflict is the sense of division brought about by thought, which is limited. And whatever is limited, religions are limited. Your beliefs are limited. Anything that's put together by thought is limited, and therefore it must always create conflict. If you see the fact of that, the truth of it, then that very truth is the catalyst that will end conflict. I'm finished for this morning. We shall continue tomorrow morning. If I may, one may point out, you must listen to the whole, not that I'm inviting you to come again tomorrow. It's up to you, I'm not interested whether you come or don't come. And I mean it. But if you want to understand the whole issue, the whole totality of life, you must listen to the whole thing. Not, it's a package, as you call it. Not just one chapter of it. It's a whole book you must read. It's got many chapters, many paragraphs. And that book is you. And as we're going to talk about all these matters in the next week, if you're willing, one must listen to the totality of it. May I get up now?